After 3 years, and I'm sure more lineup changes knowing the band, Iced Earth has returned with another album here in 2017, Incorruptible. I was very disappointed with Plagues of Babylon. I did not really like that album very much. I reviewed that album. I still don't really care for it. It's not the worst thing in the world, except for that country cover, which was just awful. And Cthulhu, which was an awesome track. The one song on that album I really like. The rest of it I found to be just forgettable and boring, and there was just nothing that drew me to any of those songs. I honestly considered giving up on the band after that album and after several albums that I just have not cared for. First thing I will say about this album is each song has at least something going for it, which is a positive. Even the songs that I don't care for very much have something about them, some part of the song that I can say, hey, but they did that really good, or that was really cool what they did there. And that's a huge step up over most of the last 5 albums. Dystopia was awesome, but pretty much everything from Glorious Burden through Plagues of Babylon, except for Dystopia, I don't really care for, except for maybe a few songs here and there. Now the negative, it's a review by me, so there's got to be negatives in there. The biggest problem with this album, I think the choruses don't really take their respective songs to that next level like they're supposed to. I feel like they try. I don't feel like they're bad necessarily. Most of them are okay or even passable and don't bring the song down any. A couple of them kind of do. But very few of them actually take the song to that next level. And at times I feel like this album is a bit unfinished. There are sections that just feel like the transition from one section to the next is a bit rushed. There are times where it just feels like the ideas they had weren't fleshed out well enough. And there are also not a whole lot of great songs on here. Good songs, but not great, with few exceptions. Now the good is this album seems to be better than the sum of its parts. I do quite enjoy this album, actually. Even though there aren't very many songs that I would classify as great, as a whole, I can listen to this album pretty much straight through and enjoy it. And I can't really say that about any of the other albums that I reviewed that have come out this year. Overkill, I guess, would be the closest one. But honestly, I find this album to be a little more memorable than that one. Which is not me complaining about Overkill. I love me some Overkill. The band does a competent job here, sometimes even exceeding that, but it's really tough to judge them because Jon Schaffer is the band and he's the one who writes all the songs. And from what I can tell, based on an interview I saw with Matt Barlow a few years ago, it basically sounds like Jon writes everything and everybody else just sort of comes in and plays what he writes or sings what he writes. So it's really kind of tough to judge the musicians on this album. But I can say they do a competent job. Sometimes even Stu Block exceeds that and does really well. He's an awesome vocalist. Just singing for a band where he's not able to showcase his full talents. The album opens with Great Heathen Army, which starts off with kind of a symphonic intro with some percussions or a drum beat of some sort, some stringed instruments. Kind of has an epic sounding build up until a guitar chord rings out, and then you get a heavier, kind of faster intro and the main riff, and the song really kicks in. This song's got a nice pacing to it. The verses are really good. This is one of those songs, though, that it feels like with a great epic chorus could have been a great song, and instead it's just a good song. It is a very nice opener. When I heard this, I thought automatically this is definitely going to be better than Plagues, and this album definitely lived up to that. Solid track, but it could have been better. Black Flag is next, and before I even knew anything about this song, before I knew the name of it, anything, just listening to it, the intro is very slow, kind of sinister sounding, and I couldn't help but think of a ship at sea from like the 1800s or earlier at night, and a lot of waves, and you just got all these people out on the deck. Just kind of the mental image I got before I even saw that the song title was Black Flag and that it was a pirate song. At first, when I heard this intro, I was disappointed. After the first song, I was like, okay, well, I want more fast and heavy. And this part being slow, I thought it was way too early in the album for a slow section. The song kicks into the main verse shortly after the intro. I actually find that to be one of the sections that could have fleshed out a little bit more. I feel like the transition could have been a little bit better and a little less abrupt. But then the song kicks in, and it's a faster paced song. The verses are enjoyable enough. Could have used a better chorus, but what they have works well enough. It's overall a decent track. Not one of the best songs I've ever heard, but still a good track to listen to. Raven Wing is next, and this one starts out with an acoustic section that sounds like the verse to a ballad. The song changes after a bit, and it's not really a ballad. It's more of a slightly up-tempo, I guess, hard rock song? They've done songs with this style before. I'm thinking of the last track to Dystopia. I can't remember the name of the song, although this one's slower paced than that one. The guitars had kind of a similar tone to that, where they weren't excessively heavy, but they weren't soft either. So it's kind of like that, if you can kind of imagine a slower paced version of that if you haven't heard the song yet. Honestly, this song is just kind of there to me. It's not bad, but on its own, it doesn't really do a whole lot for me. I enjoy it just fine listening to the album, but on its own, it's just not that great of a song in my opinion. The Veil is next, and this is the ballad of the album. This song is actually growing on me the more I listen to it. I think the chorus is actually one of the better choruses. It does feel like it has something missing. Next we have Seven-Headed Whore, and this for me is the highlight of the album. This is the heaviest, thrashiest song, fastest song on the album. It's got a great chorus, it's got great verses, it's got awesome guitar riffing. It's just a complete song. I would not have minded if the song had been a little bit longer, maybe extended the guitar solo, but overall, this is a fantastic song and definitely the standout of this album for me. Unfortunately, we get into The Relic, and this song, honestly, I just listened to this album and I can't remember it. I know it's kind of softer. I know there were some melodic vocals by Stu that I really enjoyed. Kind of sounded a little bit like Matt Barlow. Very cool. There was also more of a progressive instrumental section and bridge, melodic sections towards the end of the song that I thought were pretty good. But the meat and potatoes of the song, the verse chorus sections, just didn't do anything for me. This is easily my least favorite song on the album, not including the instrumental, which I honestly gave a pass. I'm not a fan of instrumentals myself, so I just kind of ignored that track. Brothers is next, and it kind of has a similar feel, maybe a little bit heavier than Raven Wing, but kind of like that. It's a little bit better song, but it's not really a standout track. It's a decent filler track. It's got a decent chorus. It starts off kind of slow, actually, but then it does pick up like Raven Wing. It's basically Raven Wing Part 2, but a little bit better. Not a bad song. Defiance is next, and this is another heavier track. The verses I like quite a bit. They're nothing special, but they got a nice guitar riff going. There's nice drumming and a good vocal melody going on here. Everybody does their job just fine during the verses of the song. But the chorus really sucks the life out of the song. Parts of it vocally are pretty good, but parts of it I don't really like. It's a lot slower than the verses, which can work. Songs have done that before and work just fine. But there's not really a good transition, and the first couple lines of vocals of the chorus don't really help that any, as they're honestly not very good melodies for those sections. Clear the Way ends the album, and this is the epic of the album. It starts off with some clean guitar chords kind of ringing out. Honestly, the intro, I'm not really a big fan of the playing. It's just, like I said, a couple of chords ringing out here and there. What I do think is cool about this section is the guitar tones and the effects that they use on it. It has a very kind of airy feel to it. Like, it just sounds like there's a lot of room to breathe for the guitars in this segment. And I think it sounds really cool. It's just the playing doesn't really do a whole lot for me. It's not bad or anything like that, but it's definitely one of those sections that if they did not have it, the song would work just fine. And might even work a little better. And then kicks in with a kind of cool, funky drum beat and a nice heavy guitar riff as the song builds towards the main riff of the song, which is also very good. The drumming is also really cool. Everyone does their job nicely on this song. The verses are solid, they flow really well together. I guess kind of the chorus, or maybe the build-up of the chorus, it seems like the chorus to me, kind of comes in a little bit abruptly as well, but it works a little better than it did on Defiance. The bulk of the song is pretty good. It's nice, heavier song. It's got a little bit of a different tone for Iced Earth, a little bit of a different style, I guess. Sorry, I'm like starting to fall asleep as I do this review, which is not good. Luckily, we're almost done. I think this song, though, the problem is I think it's a little bit too long. Like, not really. I can listen to this song all the way through and not really get bored. But once the instrumental break hits, I kind of start to lose interest. There's a part that kind of reminds me of something by Rush, but I can't quite place what song. And that's kind of cool at first. I do enjoy that, but there's not a guitar solo. I mean, in a 9+ minute song, you would think there would be a guitar solo, and there really isn't. And then after a while, the song kind of stops and goes back into that intro section again. I think it has a little bit more to it this time, but it just, I don't know, it just kind of does that for a little bit before you get back into the main part of the song again. And I don't know, by the time I get back to the third verse, it's like I gotta reacclimate myself after that long instrumental section that, I don't know, just kind of was there and wasn't really anything spectacular. The song itself is pretty good. I just think maybe it should have been more like a 4 or 5 minute song rather than a 9-minute track. But even with it being 9 minutes, that still doesn't ruin the song. It's still an enjoyable track. I probably come across very negative towards this album. I do actually enjoy it. It's just like I've said before, I think this album is greater than the sum of its parts. While I can nitpick each song individually, when you put them together, it does make an enjoyable listen. I can listen to this front to back and enjoy it. Even with The Relic, which is a song I don't really enjoy too much. It's not like a terrible track or anything like that. It's just one that I don't really enjoy much. But when I'm just listening to the album, it can come and go and it's fine. I do enjoy this album. I think it's a bit of missed potential as I see flashes of an album that wants to be great and just isn't. I feel like maybe they should have put a little bit more effort into fleshing out some of the ideas that they had, and I think this could have been a really awesome album. As it stands, it's only a pretty good album. I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. It is enjoyable. I definitely recommend it to Iced Earth fans. It's just there's not a whole lot of best of worthy tracks on here.